And welcome in. I'm Stan, the fan of PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com. It's Wednesday night. It's time for our PressBox Live. With me tonight, in addition, normally my co-host is Gary Stein. Gary's got the night off. Bill Ordine, old friend of mine, and now also was our gaming writer at PressBox for several years. He is now working for Gambling.com as their national writer, specializing in online gaming and sports wagering. Bill, thank you for sitting in with us tonight.
Good to be here.
All right, very excited to bring back for his second appearance on PressBox Live, and that is Jake Joyce, who's the, I'm going to get the title exactly right, Chief Marketing Officer for Live Casino Hotel, and that is Jake Joyce. Jake, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, the election, no matter what side you're on, has been kind of crazy. But one thing in Maryland we're pretty excited about, at least I know the three of us are excited about it, is overwhelmingly the initiative passed that's going to pave the way for sports gambling to take place in the state of Maryland. What was your reaction, Jake, at the response that from the vote tally?
Yeah, well, I mean, my response was one that wasn't of shock. Yep. At least on the referendum, maybe on the general election, I had some shock. But that I think that was nationwide. But here in Maryland, we were not shocked by the outcome. The yes on question 2, which was, of course, the sports betting referendum, passed at a margin of nearly 2-1. Yep. And we know that the early polling data, even 6 months prior, even prior to COVID, was very much in the support of this. So we're glad that people voted, and they voted in this way. Now we lean on our legislatures and elected officials to write a bill that we're also happy with, right?
So before we get into the nuts and bolts of this, I did want to ask you, you started at Live Casino about, I'm guessing, is it now been 9-10 months ago?
Something it's been, like that? Boy, it feels like forever, right?
It feels like
it continues to go on and on. Days I don't understand how the time passed so quickly, and other days it's like we're still in this, right? But to answer your question directly, it's been a bit over a year, about a year.
Okay. The reason I ask is this an area, is sports betting an area of expertise you have? Is it part of the reason that you were brought in to be at this location?
I hope there's more than just one reason I was brought in to as the chief marketing officer, but I do have some experience running sports books. Obviously, 15 years in Las Vegas. I've worked at properties that operated them solely by themselves, and then even where I spent my last few years in Vegas at the Palms Casino, we actually had it leased to a third party at the time, Cantor Technology. Nonetheless, though, was the only place up until the Supreme Court changed the law that you could legally bet on sports in the United States. So a lot of folks are leaning on, or I should say operators are leaning on people that have experience in that jurisdiction, because there was nowhere else in the country to find those experts.
Before I turn you over to Bill for a couple deep dive questions, so how important is sports wagering to a casino?
Well, it's incredibly important. It adds to the overall cachet and amenities that the person who has a propensity to game, who's in our building, wants to do, right? Let me just put a couple things into perspective for you that tells you why it's important, or why the operators that don't have it want to have it. The first 4 days of the first weekend of March Madness is the highest gross gaming days in the year.
Higher than the Super Bowl. Yeah,
higher than the Super Bowl. Yeah. You're getting a full 4 days, 9 p.m. Pacific time. If you've ever been to Las Vegas, or really anywhere in Nevada during that period of time each March, you can't go to the sports book at 6 a.m. without paying for a seat or getting in line behind hundreds of people. I remember when I first moved to Vegas, and I'm an Arizona Wildcats fan. College is my game. So, and they're certainly a basketball school. I remember in 2004, when I first moved to Las Vegas, I had to pay $100 to sit at a bar to watch a game.
This is in the days of Lute Olson, right? Lute Olson.
He had just left, actually.
Okay.
I think he had just left, but you may be right. He might have had another year or two. He had a little weird coming and going out the door a few times during his end of his tenure there. But nonetheless, it just goes to show the demand for sports betting and sports watching and excitement inside a casino. We just opened a new property in Pennsylvania, just south of Pittsburgh, 2 weeks ago. We dedicated over 25% of the space in that entire facility to really sports fandom. I mean, to watch sports. We've got 22,000 square feet dedicated to watching sports in an incredible environment, right? It's something we have to do better than we ever did in the past, because people have an option to buy an 85-inch TV and watch it at home. Yeah. Right? Which, back in the day, you had to go to the books. You had to go to the Westgates and the old Hilton sports books to really get that experience. And so, if you can do that with 10 people at home on an 85-inch TV, I've got to do something way better. I've got to do an incredible experience that you can't get at home or anywhere else. And that's why it's incredibly important. It's not only important to the casino, but it's really important to Maryland and the casino operators here, because every surrounding state, including the District of Columbia, has sports betting. Yeah. So those dollars we know are going out of state. Keep the dollars here.
Bill, go ahead. I know you got a couple of good questions.
Jake, thanks very much for being with us again. And obviously, I've been looking at this for a long time. Yeah. So I'll ask you a question about marketing. A big part of running a sports book these days is player acquisition, because it's all about online. As much as the sports book, like you have out there toward Pittsburgh, is a big, sexy space for people, the real money is in online gambling. And consequently, the marketing has just been wild around the country for online sports wagering. Will you have a hand in that? And how do you see that going?
We have to have a hand in it. I think if we just invest in building the book and the ability to take a transaction, we're going to lose before the race starts. You hit it on the head there. It's about acquisition. It's about lifetime value of that player. That's what everybody's racing towards right now. And if you look at the large players that have gotten up and running in multiple jurisdictions since this law has changed, you can see it. I mean, and you guys have read about it. You've probably talked about it. How does an acquisition of Barstool Sports and $180 million in acquisition then generate $80 million in revenue makes sense, right? And we've seen those executives get called and questioned that by Wall Street and other peers. But their formula is one that I think makes sense, but time will tell. Time will definitely tell on whether that acquisition is smart. We have to be in that business. The good news is for us is we're established. We've got a brand and market for 9 years. We've got partnerships and awareness in front of customers that I think are going to find interest and demand sports betting. And by that, I mean, I've got sponsorships with every professional sports team in both Baltimore and DC. So I've got the brand. The customers know who we are. The customers know where we are. We're in the right place. And then the last kind of final piece to our successful puzzle is we have a partnership with FanDuel, who's really the earliest player in this whole space, right? That was their DFS strategy, their daily fantasy sports strategy. That was customer acquisition. That's all it was. There wasn't a lot of money to be made, but it was all about, let's get in there, let's find the people who have a propensity and demand for this, and we're going to be the Trojan horse. We'll get in there on DFS, and when the law gets changed, and again, they didn't bet on if, it was just when. And we already know who those customers are. And that's why FanDuel and really the other large players in these states, as soon as they flip the switch, they've got 100,000, 200,000, 1 million customers in the state and can start taking bets and making money on day one. So again, that partnership is a strong one. It's in Pennsylvania. It's rolled out in Pittsburgh. It'll be there in Philly when we open early next year. And they're certainly going to be our partner down here in Maryland as well. And we look forward to both getting a win-win out of this.
Yeah, I've been writing about FanDuel since pretty much the day they opened.
Yeah.
back in 2010. I covered their very first national championship that was held at the Palazzo
Oh
in
yeah.
Las Vegas. And the winner of that happened to be a guy from the Philadelphia area. He won the princely sum of $25,000.
Nice.
The guy by the name of Joe Vance.
Well,
But at any
they're
rate,
incredible people. They look at really this business is looked at much differently than it was even a few years ago, right? Sportsbook in Vegas, you're probably aware of. We were often just trying to break even. You're trying to maybe make a 1 or 2%, not leverage yourself too much, not take too much risk.
Yeah.
The large players now, every bet is its own individual risk profile. It doesn't matter if 80% of the money is on one team versus the other. It's likely not going to move the line too much, or if at all. We all know too, in Vegas, there was no professional sports teams. The college teams were pretty minimal, other than UNLV and UNR, right?
Right.
You didn't have to worry about home field advantage and home field money going too far to one side. So like when sports betting becomes legal, say in Massachusetts, every time there's a Patriots game, 70% of the money is going to be on the Patriots side.
Yeah.
Traditionally, or historically, I should say, that was a challenge because you didn't want to put too much liability on one side. You wanted to try and weight it equally. The large players nationally nowadays, it's not even an issue. They don't. Everything's an independent profile, and so we'll see what happens down the road. Again, as we kind of get to the law of large numbers and you get nationwide, what's going to happen?
I want to ask you a question that applies particularly to you guys. Obviously, you have a terrific partnership with FanDuel. In fact, I was just writing about FanDuel's recent stock issue or transaction where a big player bought up the majority or the remaining majority of FanDuel stock. So obviously you're with a heavyweight operation there. How do you see the synergy working out between the online and the bricks and mortars there at Live, so that they work off of each other, so that what happens online benefits your retail operation and maybe vice versa?
Yeah, we've had a lot of those discussions. You certainly can't bring in just an online partner and hope that it all works out. You've certainly there's a lot of tasks and tactics to overcome, right? How do we know that I acquired the player versus you? Especially in a place like Pennsylvania where there's millions of dollars in TV advertisements,
right,
on all these platforms. How do we, Live Pittsburgh, for example, acquire the customers if everybody else is already out there doing it? So we've got a lot of that worked out on the back end. But how does it benefit the customer? Let me put it in that perspective. If you're playing, say, for example, at our house, and whether you're playing online or you're physically making that wager in person at our retail book, if you're of a certain caliber, just like you were if you were a slot or table player, you're going to get assigned to host. You're going to be invited to special events, grand openings. When we go to the hospitality suites in the stadiums, that's where you get a different experience than you would never get just betting online on your couch every day. And that's already happened today. So, for example, we launched online prior to opening in Pittsburgh. Guess who got an invite to our opening grand party, like in our ribbon cutting ceremonies? We called the people that had played online and bet online already with us, that had already signed up, already participated. That was an amazing experience. Imagine sitting at home and getting a call from a VIP host and saying, hey, look, we really appreciate being part of the brand. We'd love for you to come out and meet the Cordish family and be a part of the ribbon cutting ceremony and welcome the property to the area. We also gave you a sneak preview of the property and let you gamble on preview days prior to us opening to the public. Those are the things that we're going to be able to bring to the table. And from the flip side, FanDuel has an incredible amount of celebrities and athletes, Hall of Fame alumni, that they have also brought us into these experiences. So, for example, I've got athletes that'll be at our hospitality tents and in our suites that of course you can only get invited to as being a VIP player. Something that is not going to be recognized by simply wagering online.
Gotcha.
Jake, Let me pick back up with the fact that this was voted in a referendum in November. What's the biggest benefit you see the state having in having legalized sports betting? Is it just simply as simple as the taxable dollars are going to go to the state that were going elsewhere?
It's gonna, well, at the end of the day, it's all tax dollars, right? But it's from different sources. It's not just the wagering, right? At this point in time, the wagering dollars on sports are all going out of state. You know, PA, West Virginia, Delaware, DC, soon to be Virginia. You know, their applications are already in. They're just making their decisions of who gets those licenses. So that's really a clawback. What is already ours, I think, is incredibly important. You've, however, also got things like jobs. You know, not only will we be, you know, building our book, but in that book, we're going to have, you know, probably 100 to 200 team members as well, serving food and beverage and entertainment experiences in a brand new outlet. So those are all incremental new jobs that weren't here, you know, prior to this bill being passed, the referendum being passed. I think there's a ripple effect from that as well. You know, depending on who gets the licenses, you know, there could be more to come. But in addition, if you give the licenses to the casinos and the folks have to really be here to make those wagers, that inevitably is likely going to raise the additional gaming tax you would get on slots and tables, because there is a lot of crossover play.
There's really no doubt that you're going to get a piece of it. MGM is going to get a piece of it. The Horseshoe is going to get a piece of it. Do you feel that others are entitled to be licensed, or do you think it should be exclusively at the casino homes?
Well, I'm a bit biased, but I think it should be exclusively to the gaming operators. But let me tell you why.
Yeah.
One, it's a highly regulated environment, right? It's not just IRS and gaming. It's FinCEN. It's anti-money laundering. Obviously, integrity of game and sports in general. You know, background checks. A lot of things that a kind of non-gaming operator would have tremendous challenge overcoming, either capital costs or just, you know, the technology that's needed. In addition, we have the infrastructure in place to do it and do it right, and maximize or optimally provide the state with the most tax dollars. And there's examples of this not being done correctly. DC is a prime example. The lottery is doing it, and you look at their hold, you look at their revenue, they have almost exclusivity really up until the Capital One Arena got launched, and it was a disaster. I don't know another way to put it. It never materialized to any of their projections. And so again, you can choose to go kind of the lottery model, which is an extreme example where anybody can be kind of an operator, or you can give it to the folks that have also invested in this. And by invested, I mean tens of millions of dollars in licensing, background checks, and flip the switch almost immediately without having to worry about the integrity of the business.
Bill, you got a couple more?
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned DC. Obviously, I work in an environment where we track every state's revenues every month. So we are very familiar with the DC catastrophe. And if you needed a model of what not to do, that certainly is it. Yeah. So you guys are going to get to go to bat in work groups with the legislature starting next month. What states do you think provide a good model for Maryland to follow?
That's a great question. Well, with so many moving parts and some of it really not finished just yet today, you know, I would probably lean on those with the most gaming experience operating this the best way. And again, I'll lean on Nevada. I'll lean on New Jersey. You know, they seem to be at least reasonable and logical, and whatever they put in place doesn't kind of proliferate. It doesn't seem to proliferate every year. You know, there are some states where you know, we pass one thing today and you got kind of exclusivity, and you know, a year or two later we need more tax revenue, where you know your exclusivity is gone. So That's the one important thing I would like to at least hope we keep in place in the long term, is that, you know, if it is given to casinos or whoever it's just given to, that at least that remains in place. Because again, there's a big investment to do this and do it right. And the last thing you want to do is it just proliferate and be a race at the bottom.
Right. I'll ask a question that really is consumer oriented, and I think in your wheelhouse. You mentioned in passing the Westgate.
Yeah.
For folks who are not familiar, the Westgate has traditionally been the biggest and grandest sports book in Las Vegas. Whether you've heard of that casino or not, Jake Joyce and the Westgate are legends in the sports wagering business. And during the football season, when we have a normal football season, the Westgate opens up ballrooms and you know, maybe it's free or maybe there's a nominal admission, and there's hot dogs and there's beverages and that sort of thing, giant screens, and there's basically a party every NFL Sunday to get essentially thousands of people in the building using a space that otherwise would not be used. How about live? Do you envision that sort of thing happening at your place?
Absolutely. We already started doing it. So when we built our 40,000 square foot, the hall here at Live Concert Theater, that was immediately one of those things we turned on. You know, unfortunately, we opened it on New Year's Eve, and so we got to use it for an all, 10 weeks or so. We got shut down in March. In fact, I had 3 concerts in mid-February, and I think that was it. But we actually did use it for Super Bowl. We also had used it for some UFC fight parties and watch parties, and they were highly successful. You see those things in Vegas as well. In fact, I've attended the Super Bowl party at the Westbrook Convention Center, I guess you can call it, at the just a few years ago, and I've attended probably a dozen others across the strip there over the years. And I think that's something that would interest a lot of people in this area to come out and look. You've got cheerleaders, you're doing giveaways. It's open food, it's beverage. It's an incredible event. And what a way to just put 500, 1,000 people together. You do the big square boards. You do these intermissions where you announce winners. You can have satellite betting kiosks. It's just an incredible environment, and one I look forward to capitalizing on. Hopefully when COVID passes.
Yeah, give you 20 big Sundays every football season, doesn't it?
Yeah. Jake, it's mandated by the state that a certain portion of slots revenue goes to the racetrack. If you know the history of Maryland, the racetracks were supposedly going to be where slots and casinos were going to, ferment and start. And they kind of really dropped the ball in this state. Do you feel because there's money mandated for the racetracks already that should almost be the reason that they get excluded from having casino sports betting at tracks?
Yeah, I think it certainly makes the argument. If the funds are going to the state, and then they want to allocate their funds all differently, that's up to them. And if they want to support those racetracks and keeping that industry propped up this way, that's up to them. I will say this though, the dollars coming from sports betting are very similar to those that are sourced to slots and tables. And by that I mean they go into an education lockbox fund. Those funds cannot be used for anything else other than the education trust fund. In fact, there was another law passed just a couple of years ago to really lock it down, because there was some movement of dollars in terms of lotto and things like that. So all tax revenues based on wagering, doesn't matter the source, go to education. So the good news is, at least when you stepped into the your ballot box, I should say, you can be confident that the way that that question was drafted and that those funds are going to education is true.
I wanted to ask you a couple of actual real gaming questions now, sports betting questions. What defines sports betting? Is it betting on outcomes of games, Or am I going to be able to bet on horse racing, boxing, golf, Indy 500? I mean, what's going to be what we can wager on in Maryland?
Yeah, that's a great question. One that would require a definitions list.
Yeah.
Longer than we can imagine, right? But I'll try and break it down as simple as possible. The sport, we'll call it wagering, because then we got to start defining, well, what's a sport? It's wagering. Now we say sports betting because I don't think there's an appetite to allow wagering on other events. And by other events, I can look at Europe and other continents of what they do. And those events, political outcomes. There was, who shot JR was probably a bet for those that remember the show Dallas. I might age myself now, but those would be other events that you could wager on. That's not what we're looking to do.
But are we going to be able to, in Maryland, bet on the Triple Crown races?
Correct.
Or regular horse racing or a big boxing match?
Yep, you'll be able to do all those. Anything from, we'll go even lower. Cricket, last 5 days sometimes.
Okay.
Football, soccer, yes, all of the aboard. The only difference is when somebody says horse racing, I have to kind of clarify that's got this weird term called parimutuel, which all it means is the money that goes in the pool is paid out to all the people that win those wagers.
Yeah.
So there's really no house win other than a vig that's collected at the bet. But all of those mentioned will certainly be available.
Now, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, I'm imagining when a lot of people think of gambling, they'll look at a Bill Ordine or Stan the Fan, and they'll say, those guys are gamblers. The customer that Live is trying to get, or any casino is trying to get, much different. It's a much different caricature of who the gambler is, isn't it today? I mean, you're looking for young professionals, not the 70-year-old guys,
Yeah, well, look, we want to give great service and a tremendous time and experience while you're here, no matter your age or demographic or, financial means. Long as you have fun and you're doing it responsibly, we're here to take care of you. But the shift in the customer you often see at a casino is likely going to change, again, once sports betting comes into play. You typically get more of a table games player, which tends to be more male than female. Unlike slots, it tends to skew a bit younger. So on the slots, you're often looking at customers that are in that, young 50s and up range. On the sports betting and table game side, it's more like the 30s and up is what you're seeing. You'll certainly get the 20-year-olds and the looky-loos, and those are likely your parlay bets. You're kind of more experienced.
Are those going to be in other words, the age, does that determine whether people are betting on events or propositions? I tend to think of older bettors wanting to bet a team, younger bettors saying, hey, I can bet $5 on the length of the national anthem or something like that.
Yeah, well, I think, when we were all younger, we thought we could get rich quick, right? We thought we were better than everybody else. So
yeah, I learned.
Time and time again, right? Somebody's got the $10 parlay on 11 spots and they think they're, $80,000. Then it was always the last game, right?
Yep.
Last game that turned the ticket. So, look, I think the younger crowd does tend to chase some of the big wins. I'll call it the Powerball, strategy, Hail Mary strategy in play. But, that's, I think, the cool thing about sports betting is you take some of those same concepts of horse wagering, right? I could bet a 50-cent win or dollar trifecta and win an amazing amount of money, especially at a big race. The cool thing with parlays and where the technology is going, imagine when 5G gets there. Imagine when you have a bit less delay on television than you do now, that I will be able to wager on every pitch. That's pretty.
Yeah.
That's a pretty exciting thing.
Yeah. Bill.
Well, of course, you just mentioned something that I believe is not only the future of sports wagering, but the future of sports, period. And that's in-play wagering. That you will be able to obviously gamble on events as the games are being played themselves. And, to give an example, for instance, let's say you take the Ravens, giving 7 points, and then they get the first kickoff and they have to punt. All of a sudden, the line changes to 6.5 because they squandered their first possession. And now you can take the Ravens giving only 6.5. And this is going to be a big part of your sports book, both online and retail, isn't it?
It is. It's definitely going to be that. And I think it's going to go further than that. I think you're going to start seeing not just in-game wagering but you're going to see that taken to a whole new level. I think you might start seeing things like, hey, I think the pitcher is going to throw 60% strikes today.
Right.
And they're just going to add up all the strikes and balls and figure out where it all landed. So it may not even be a single event or an outcome. You might be betting on statistics of somebody
Absolutely
outside the game in and of itself, right? Think of all the things we do with fantasy and how we calculate points up and down. You can translate all those into wagers. They just have a certain kind of risk profile, right? And payout. So I think there's 100 things we're not thinking of right now and haven't thought of that.
Right. Maybe this is
makes it very exciting.
Okay, Bill, can I jump in and ask Jake a quick question about that? Who is sitting there? Is it Jake Joyce, or is there somebody else or group of people that are going to decide what is wagerable? How do you come up with what the wagers are? Or is it started out in Vegas and you just copy what Vegas does? I really don't know how that comes about.
It's actually, there's a lot that goes into it, and it's not me. We wouldn't be open very long if it was me. I actually, a lot of times I am amazed. Aren't we all amazed that, like, you watch a game, you're looking at the ticket and you're like, I missed it by, the 6.5 versus 7.
Yeah.
7 and they had 6.
Yep.
It seems to happen all the time. I'll answer your question, don't worry, but side story happened to me. We can go back to the Falcons-Patriots game a few years ago.
You had the Falcons?
$70 on my 9 Falcons tickets at halftime. Were offering me money to buy them at half price, right? I imagine that might become a wager down the road. Hedge your winning bet before the game ends. Long story,
like a form of insurance.
Every one of those wagers, I think, except for the who scored first wager. So I went from 470 to 30 at the end of the day, which was a net loss. I think those are coming down the pipe if they're not already developed. In the end, though, the people making those decisions, that's where we rely on the folks like FanDuel and DraftKings, where I'm not worried about the liability on one side versus the other. They actually have go to any of the major trading desks on Wall Street. Very similar. They have quants. They have a trading desk. And actually, what they call it, those people are just statistical quants looking at data, external factors, and all the information they can. That
makes perfect sense.
An outcome. Yeah.
All right, Bill. I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's quite all right. No, I was going to just piggyback on that, and that there is a whole growing niche is not the right word, because it's a mammoth niche of companies like Sports Radar, Genius Sports, that are essentially in the business of risk analysis and actually collating and authenticating the data that's used to resolve these outcomes, because you need an authoritative voice deciding whether or not the pitches are 60% or 59%. So there's got to be an authoritative voice there, and that's what these companies do. I think in your case, maybe FanDuel is one-stop shopping in getting all those services, or maybe you will engage a Sport Radar or Genius Sports to assist in all this.
There's a lot that goes into play. You're absolutely right with that. I remember building just a couple pick'em and fantasy games for some clients when I was consulting a number of years back, and I had to get. I remember one an Australian company I was working with, casino down there. I had to get the scores, official scores,
right,
to get all the in-game statistics automatically fed in real time. That was one subscription service, and you had to validate it. indemnify yourself from that, the errors in that and so forth. And then there's just 100 other things, right? It's know your customer, anti-money laundering software that looks for patterns in betting to see if there's, some kind of internal workings or, something that's, might be jeopardizing the integrity of the game or the wager. There are dozens and dozens of systems and pieces of technology in place on a sports wager now. And really almost any wagering that, we're required to do either through a regulation or again, just so, we know who people are and what they're betting, so we protect ourselves. I imagine as this evolves over time, that is only going to grow, in scope. However, on that too, and I know you didn't ask this question, we're probably going to see consolidation as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're seeing it already.
You're seeing it already. You might have turnkey services, right? You
Right.
can license, imagine a state goes lotto style. Any convenience store can sell a sports ticket.
Right.
You roll your eyes. I do too.
I know. And I mean,
Really
we already have it in some places.
Yeah.
And by the way, it generally doesn't work. As the
it doesn't.
lottery
You can look at the Europe models where that is. They're just little betting shops. They don't really do much for anybody. But those betting shops, if you operate a 7-Eleven in Italy and you want to turn on sports betting, you just go find a turnkey solution.
Right, exactly. Right. I was going to ask you what I hope is an easier question. You've been doing this a long time. Do you have any particular promotion or marketing pitch or anything that you feel was really effective, that you enjoyed doing and made your bosses happy? You have one up your sleeve that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, I mean, it's just stuff from the past. I have I've had some stuff that just performed wildly well that I just thought were calendar fills. That way, that we're like, let's just try it. We'll see what. I'll tell you two. I'll tell you one, and we can go from there. Maybe I'll tell you the other. But the other one was not really a promotion. It was some insight we found through testing some messaging. But the first one, if I think Groupon's still around. It was kind of this platform where people were like, they just threw stuff on there because we're making any revenue whatsoever. So we took a slow period in time. It was probably this time of year, if I remember, in Vegas. And we said, let's throw out a meal for two to the buffet, but then we'll add one free cocktail at the center bar or free admission to the bar on the rooftop, which normally costs $20. If you were a male, of course, it was free if you were female. But at the end, what I did is I basically priced the buffet as normal price, and I priced it at the dinner price. And then what I did is the cocktail, you could get a free cocktail at the center bar up to $14, and then the admission at a $20 value, but it's just admission. There's no cost of goods sold with admission, right? So I said, it's a $85 value. It's $34.99. In 3 weeks, I sold $300,000. And I'll give you an even better outcome from that. Over 20% of them were for breakfast, which only cost $9.99 out of pocket. So people were using a voucher they paid more for than if they would have just shown up and paid for everything independently, all by themselves, full cash price. So
that sounds like the Palms. Is that right?
It was the Palms. It was so weird to me. So you get that. You obviously get the breakage. Then I think another 30% used it for lunch. And then like another 30% used it for dinner. Only a small section used it for the seafood dinner, which is really where the value was. And then again, the majority of the folks that used the second option on the drink or the admission to the rooftop bar, they went to the rooftop bar.
Right.
I gave you the admission value, but you went upstairs and bought a higher price. I mean, in the end, I was like, I couldn't believe it was a win. And I'll never forget, my president says, he finally gave in. Well, I said, well, let's just try it. Like, we always talk about A/B testing stuff. Like, just try it. I didn't even think it was really going to work, but I needed something out there. We still talk about it to this day. We're like, can you believe that did that?
Hey, Jake, as we wind down, and I really appreciate Jake Joyce is our guest, Chief Marketing Officer for Live Casino Hotel. Jake, I want to wrap back around to what the experience is going to be like at the casino for players that are betting sports. And when we talk about the dollars that might be wagered is it more important for the casino that sports betting on sports adds to the fabric of excitement at the at the venue? Is that more what it's about, or is it just the dollars?
No, it's about that excitement. It's really one of those final pieces we needed, right? We opened with just slots. We added tables. Then we added
Yep.
then we added a place for you to put your head at night. We added the hotel. We added the concert. This is that final piece. And I will tell you why I give you that answer too. We're building this in the center of the casino.
Is this a sport and social club?
This is sports and social. Will be in the center of the property. And we unfortunately got the call to shut down. The thing we did after 2 weeks of cleaning and realizing we were probably going to get shut down for a little while longer, 3 months, we put up a construction wall and we started demoing. And we said, let's use this opportunity to get ahead of this and go. Obviously, no vote, no referendum yet, no ballot even delivered.
Right.
We made the initial decision to put this investment dollars in there now and to put it in the middle of the casino because we do think it really provides that energetic, entertaining atmosphere that people really want when they go to a casino. It's a
little like the energy drink or something. It just jolts. It makes it exciting.
It is absolutely. And think about casinos today. It's a band in the center bar. Now you'll be able to see screens wrapped around, people cheering, elevated bars. You'll have social games. It's going to be an incredible experience when it opens.
All right. Give us how you think this is going to play out now. I know, as Bill alluded in his first questions, the legislature is going to be starting very shortly in January. How long do you see the licensing process taking? And when will people be out at live, pandemic aside, making their first wagers?
Yeah, well, I'm not as familiar with the Maryland legislature being still relatively new and only seeing one session. But if it's anything like some of the other states I've worked in, I imagine all the bills are passed in the last 48 hours before the session's up.
Yeah, it seems like
what happens, right? So we'll see. They start in early January. There's obviously bill drafts and then committees and then floor votes and so forth, so on. So unfortunately, I don't anticipate it being immediately. We got an incredible amount of guest inquiries, though, I will tell you, on November 4th. They thought, customers thought they can come in and make a bet. They were like,
right, exactly. Yeah.
So I hope that puts a little pressure on the legislature. Why wait? Why miss those March sports if there's going to be a NCAA tournament? Why?
Well, just so you know, Bill and I were saying that 2 years ago. Why wait another 2 years? Yeah. Let's get the referendum in 2018.
Yeah, you can get the referendum done. So, look, if I want to be realistic, I think we'll have the venue done, right around, early spring, call it that. And then, we're going to be ready. I mean,
okay,
we're going to be ready nonetheless. I think if they were to say you were good to go today, we could be up and running within 30 to 45 days.
And the last question I have for you, do you see that gaming at home or on your tablet or your phone, do you see that starting when gaming starts in the state of Maryland? Or do you think they'll give the casinos or the licensees sort of a head start to build up some business of their own before it goes to electronic?
Well, I certainly hope it's the latter. That would certainly benefit us and allow us to sign people up and answer questions and, again, do it the right way and not confuse folks with how to do it, because it is a bit of a process. I don't know if you've signed up anywhere else, but it's a process to sign up and open an account and make a deposit, all that stuff at home. We could certainly facilitate for you here on the floor in just a much better way. So I don't know. Now, I think most states have launched, particularly with COVID, all digital sometimes at first.
Yeah.
So
that's true too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a final question or two for Jake?
I'll just chime in with that. I mean, my sense of this, looking at many states, is that it'll probably happen simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And retail and online will begin at the same time. And the devil is going to be in the details. And so what happens in these work groups is really going to be where the future of gaming and sports wagering is decided. And Jake just alluded to something. That will be a big deal. It's a big deal in Illinois. Whether or not customers are allowed to register for accounts on their computers at home, online, or whether it be required to go into a casino and register. And two states that we think of as gold standards have different points of view. Nevada makes you go into the casino to register. New Jersey lets you register online. So that will be one of the details that has to be worked out in January, along with many, many others.
Yeah, I know. I know the registration in person in Nevada was certainly a large hurdle. A lot of people didn't want to have to do. I think they've found some ways to kind of get around that with some kiosks and bar partnerships and stuff like that, right? But that's also a completely different jurisdiction. I don't think anybody wants to match what how they run that business in Nevada. So, but you make an excellent point. I mean, we'll see what happens with that. I will say though, the few places I have signed up just to see the process, I'm glad I was on site at one of them because I looked to the cage and went, "How do I do this?"
Right.
I'm not quite understanding.
It's good to have help. Particularly for people who, and I'm not saying you're technologically challenged, but many of us, I'll put myself in that category. Sometimes I would like to have some help with with this thing. So, but I mean, but it has become a big issue in a place like Illinois, where there is even disagreement between operators as to whether or not online registration or in-person registration should be the way to go.
I'm assuming who's got the online sign up pretty seamless is the one that wants.
If you were to guess, say somebody who
might have the word interactive in their name,
who has the word king in their
okay.
Hey,
it features online registration.
all right.
But we've got this other thing going on, this pandemic, which also plays into the issue of, are you going to require people to go to a casino to sign up, or are you going to let them do it from home? I mean, lots of moving parts.
That's a question for another day, and we'll see how that goes, and the timing and so forth, and where we are. Jake Joyce, Chief Marketing Officer for Live Casino Hotel. Can we make this a thing where we can get you back on, but as it's going live in a couple of months, in a few months?
Yeah. I adore you guys, so absolutely.
All right, Jake Joyce, we thank him. We wish you luck. You enjoying Maryland?
Absolutely. I've sailing season has come to an end, but I'm enjoying it, and I look forward to sailing the bay in the spring.
All right, it's a pleasure having you on. For Bill Ordine, I'm Stan the Fan. No show Monday night. Wednesday night, we'll be back with Rob Stolker and Dr. Crutchfield on a special on concussions. All right. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it tonight.
Take care.
Thank you.